Mom, hi.
Hi,
Why don't you tell us your name and when you were born?
Paula Deutschman, Paula Tews Deutschman. I was born in Gary, Indiana in October 6, 1928.
And you you lived. Uh, tell me about your early years and who did you live with when you were young?
Well, I lived with my Aunt Paula for the first, let's see, I was 2 when my dad remarried, but we still stayed at my Aunt Paula's house, and we lived there till I was 7, and then we moved, or maybe 8, something like that, and then we moved to 39th Street, which was way on the other side of town,
What?
Milwaukee.
And why did you have to live with your Aunt Paula?
Well, because my mother died when I was born, and my dad blamed everyone inside. He just was so mad that he lost his wife, and I can understand, because they were just newly married, and from what I understand, my mom got along with everyone, because when we'd go to Gary, and I'd go 1 week a year, because my Aunt Paula didn't want to go to Gary, but she'd meet my Aunt Florine in Chicago, and we'd go to probably Marshall Fields. They had a dining or like a lunchroom, and we'd meet my Aunt Florine there, and my Aunt Paula would go home on the interurban to Milwaukee. But my Aunt Florine and I would wait till my Uncle Frank came, and then we would all go to Gary.
And who was your Aunt Florine? She was your mother's sister, correct?
She was my mother's oldest sister.
And your father, Aunt Paula, was your father's sister, correct?
Yeah, she was his second sister.
His second oldest.
Pardon?
She was the second oldest of the family.
Yeah, right.
Where was Grandpa Tews in the family?
Pardon?
Where in the family was Grandpa Tews? Where was your father in the family?
Oh, he was the youngest.
He was the youngest. Oh, he was the youngest. Okay.
And he was the one that went to, the others never went beyond, I guess, maybe 8th grade.
But he went to college.
My dad was the only one that went to high school even. He graduated from West Division High School in Milwaukee.
And then where did he go to college?
He went to Wisconsin University.
Of Wisconsin.
And he graduated and got his engineering degree.
Okay. So I was going to ask you a few questions about when you were a young child.
Okay.
What, like maybe before 10, what are some of your main memories of youth, like before the age of 10?
Well, I had so many memories. It's hard to get all of them out of my head. But I remember when I was little, when I still lived with Aunt Paula, I had friends and there was one girl who was very special friend to me, and her name was Mary Maurer, and they lived just about 5 doors down, and they lived in a flat as we did. But, you know, we rented the flat, and first when we rented it to the Tysons, and they lived upstairs, and my aunt Paula and my grandpa and grandma lived downstairs, and then when I was 2, my dad met a woman that he married eventually, and that was my stepmother, and her name was Elise, and she was very nice to me.
And they had 2 more
And
children,
I had 2
right?
sisters.
And what are their names?
And the oldest was Helena, and the youngest was Rhoda, and Helena, and of course Helena, I always loved Helena too, but Rhoda and I somehow connected, and we're still friends to this day.
So how old were you when Helena was born?
I was about 13 when Helena was born, and 15 when Rhoda was born.
And when you were in grade school, did you enjoy school? What school did you go to?
I went to Bethlehem Elementary School.
And did you like school?
Well, it was okay.
Just okay. Now, I know you wanted to go to Washington High School.
Yeah.
But you didn't. You went to Lutheran High.
Yeah, right.
But I know you participated a lot you went to some of the games. Did Lutheran High have sports teams?
Well, they didn't. When I went to school there, at least they didn't have girls' teams, except we had one, because the coach there was the coach of all of the. We only had one coach for the whole school, and his name was Pat Falk, and he had a girls' basketball team.
Were you on it?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I liked to play basketball when I was young, but I wasn't picked for that team.
Oh.
But they didn't have sports for women when I went to high school.
What sports did you watch when you were growing up?
Well, I liked all sports, but I especially liked baseball.
Okay. And now how old were you when World War II started?
Let's see. I was about 7,
Oh, quite young.
but
Do you remember very much about that time?
well, I was maybe older than 7 again. I can remember it was a very tough time because we didn't have all the things we usually had. We had to get a ration card, and so the amount of food we ate was limited because we wanted to save food for the troops. And so we were willing to be put on ration cards.
You particularly liked baseball.
Yeah.
Is that how you met our father?
Yes, it was. Of course, I didn't know him then, but he was on another team, not the team we went there to watch, but he had the leading batting average in the whole league, and so everyone knew Frank Deutschman.
But how did you get to know him?
Actually, I met him at the Eagles ballroom.
Tell me, did you dance with him at the ballroom?
Yeah, I did.
A lot?
Well, after a while, I did dance with him a number of dances.
Was she interested?
And why were you interested in him?
Well, I don't know. He was a nice-looking boy.
Were you impressed by his baseball statistics or how he played ball?
And
Were you impressed by his ball playing?
yeah, I was. He was a very good ball player. He played right field, and he could throw the ball from right field all the way to home plate.
And did he ask you to go out with him at some point? Did he ask you to go out with him?
Yeah, he did.
So where was your first date?
I think we went to a beach party.
Oh, I think I remember him talking about that.
How old were you?
How old were you?
I must have been about 17 or 18. Or maybe just a little bit older. I can't remember exactly.
Where were you when he asked you to marry him?
In the car.
In the car. Did he give you a ring?
He did. And I ran upstairs to show my stepmother that ring.
And what did she say?
She was pleased.
She liked Dad?
Well, you know, my stepmother did. Of course, my Aunt Paula and my dad didn't. But not because there was anything wrong with Frank, but because he was Catholic. And my Aunt Paula and my dad thought that it wouldn't be good for a Catholic and a Lutheran to be married.
Were you worried about that?
No.
No. Okay, both of you were only children.
That's
correct?
right.
But you wanted to have a lot of children,
Both of us wanted big families.
a big family, and you did have a big family.
I had a big family. I had 7 children.
So what do you think was your favorite thing about being a mother?
Well, of just having 7 children and being able to be close to 7 of them, all of them in different ways.
What was the hardest thing about being a mother?
Trying not to make favorites.
So who was your favorite?
I don't know, I didn't have a favorite.
So you accomplished your goal
I
of
did.
not having favorites.
I think each child was different, and each child needed special attention. I didn't have a least favorite.
Okay.
What was special about each one of the children?
Well, let's see. The oldest was you, and you were very, very. You had a mind of your own, and you used to argue with your dad. And your dad had the opinion that all his children should listen to every word he says. But you used to argue with him, and your sister Lori would say, "Don't do that, Lenny. You're making Dad mad."
Tell about Lori. What was special about Lori?
Well, Lori was a peacemaker in the family. She got along with all of you. And she was very, very, she loved little children. And I know when you girls were little, she'd ask all the kids in the neighborhood to come over, and she'd put them all in desks and say, and teach stories, tell them stories.
What about John?
John I love Johnny. He was pretty big, not like, he was built fairly strong, and he was a good-looking boy.
What about Michael?
Michael, I love Michael. Of course, he had diabetes, and I had to take special care of Michael, and that made us very close.
What about Alan?
I loved Al too, but Alan kind of got off the track. Because
When?
he and his dad had a terrible disagreement because Dad found a bag of marijuana in his closet, and from then on, he sort of didn't like Alan.
How about Annie?
I loved my Annie. She was my baby daughter, and I loved her with all my heart.
How about Bobby?
I loved Bob too, but Bobby was the one that was the hardest to love because he was kind of off. We never knew about Bob. You know, when he was in high school, when he played baseball, and Bobby was a pretty good baseball player, but when he was in high school, he'd leave all his books on the dugout seat, and his coach would have to bring them home to him, and he did it almost every other day.
So he was scatterbrained a little
He
bit.
was very
I
scatterbrained
don't
that
think
way.
he still is, but okay. So you loved all your children, and they were all special.
They were
In a
all
lot of
special.
ways. What do you think were some of your favorite times in your life? Is there a time that stands out for you as particularly special?
Let's see. I guess when we'd have family picnics. Do you remember? We'd go to
Browns Lake. Browns
we'd
Lake?
go to Brown Lake swimming.
I remember
Do you remember that?
very
And you
well.
were a little bit afraid of the water.
I always was.
And Lori was very good in the water, and so was Bob. And Alan liked the water. I don't know about Al.
Annie liked the water a lot, right?
Annie is the one that liked the water best, because Annie was such a good swimmer, and she was on her high school swim team.
Right.
She swam the butterfly.
I remember what we did musical things, and we sang, and we were in plays.
I remember that.
Do you remember any times of those things that stood out to you?
But,
Did any of those things stand out to you?
oh yeah, I loved listening to you kids sing, and I loved every minute of listening to that. And you know, you were very good, because, you know, my cousin Milda's husband, Martin, was pretty impressed with your singing. Of course, Martin wasn't always such a nice person, but he did know music pretty well, and he was very impressed with you kids singing, and you sang it. You sang for people all over Winona, and you you'd go to special events and be the singers there, and even got a name. They called you the Deutschman family singers. And you know, I think John was part of that for a while, because I know John has a beautiful baritone.
My John.
Dear John.
And I think my brother John also does.
Yeah, your brother John too.
Um,
And your brother Alan after a while. I don't know how good a voice Alan has.
he was in musicals with us, I know that. And Annie sang with us a little bit, right?
But
I think Annie sang with us sometimes.
you know, when
too.
those kids were young, you were in a play, Fiddler on the Roof,
Right.
and you were the lead.
No, but I was one of the sisters. I
Right,
had a good part.
right, I know.
Yeah, but
And I think John was one of the Russian soldiers, wasn't he?
I think so. I think he was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Do you have any funny stories about the kids when we were growing up?
Well, let's see. I can't remember anything specific. I can't, you all played in the backyard and had a good time.
Do you remember when we played bank and took your checkbook and were handing out checks in the neighborhood? Do you remember that?
Well,
Didn't we take your checkbook once and hand out checks around the
I
neighborhood?
didn't remember that.
Oh, okay. That's probably good.
Probably good.
Well, maybe it was something you didn't want your mom to know.
Right. I think we had to go and get all the checks back.
You had to
I
go.
think we had to go and get all the checks back.
Yeah,
Maybe Dad was the one who was more involved in that.
I
I don't
think
know.
Dad was the one, not me.
Now you worked various times during your life, right?
I sure did.
Tell us some places you worked and some memories of
Well,
that.
Well, I remember I worked for a while at Perfect's Corporation in Milwaukee, and I was in the bookkeeping department at Perfect's, and I remember some of the girls I worked with.
And did you like working there?
Well, it was okay.
So you worked in bookkeeping, so you must have been good at math. Were you
I
good
guess
at math?
I was good at addition and subtraction, not at the more difficult things like geometry and trigonometry. I didn't like those.
Where were some other places you worked? Tell us about them.
I worked at Friedman's department store for a while, or it was like a grocery store.
Grocery? Oh, what did you do there?
I packed groceries into bags.
Other places?
I worked later when I was married and we moved to Florida. I worked at the Naples Beach Club for at least 25 years. And I finally retired from the Naples Beach Hotel. And you know, I had a very nice boss there who was in charge of the whole beach club. And his name was Mike Watkins. And when I retired, he said, Paula, I just don't know how we'll manage without you here, because you're so much a part of this operation. And so they had a big retirement party for me, and they gave me gifts, and I was really, must have been 65 years old then, but I just didn't feel like I was ready to stop working, because your dad had retired from Luce and Company, and he too was given a retirement party and a retirement gift, and they said, we'll pay for a vacation anywhere in the world you choose to go. And of course, it would have been nice to see some of the things in Europe and things like that, but we were more interested in the western part of the United States, and so we took the trip. And we took the trip, and we started from Naples and went all across the United States into Louisiana and Texas,
Oh,
and finally Arizona and New Mexico.
I don't know a lot about that trip. What were your favorite parts of that trip?
I can't remember all of it, but I remember we were going to go up Pikes Peak, but we couldn't get reservations because you paid to be taken to the top of Pikes Peak. And so we didn't get to do that.
Oh.
And that's something we really wanted to do.
Did you drive?
Yeah,
Was
yeah,
it by
we
car? By car.
Bye-bye.
What was your favorite trip that you ever took?
The trip we took with you and Lori and
Johnny.
and Tommy
Tommy drove.
drove us.
So we were with you and Dad, Lori and I and Tommy.
Right.
Right. That was your favorite?
Tommy met us in Seattle.
And that was your favorite?
That was my favorite trip of all.
Why?
Because Frank and I finally got to see California.
Wow.
Why?
And I loved every minute of that trip. Being with you kids and getting to see California. And we didn't see mountains, but we saw the Pacific Ocean.
Oh yeah.
And
We saw some mountains. We saw Mount
we saw,
Rainier,
yeah,
right?
but not in California.
No,
we
that
saw
was in
mountains in
Washington.
Washington,
Yeah.
Mount Rainier. Remember we met Bobby and Sean in San Diego, and I remember going to the San Diego Zoo,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
I didn't get to see enough of it, because when you're in a wheelchair, you don't see everything.
Right.
But we did see seals there.
Is there anything that you regret in your life?
Really, I don't have any regrets. I live my life to the fullest. I don't really have any regrets. I raised 7 children, and I think they're all turned out to be very good people.
Describe what you like to read.
I like to read about history and all about the West. I read any book I can that's about history and includes the West.
Do you like mysteries?
I do.
Why?
I love the one I probably love the best was John Grisham,
Ah, I didn't know that.
but he's dead now.
But you can read his books.
I can read all his books.
Have you read most of them?
Yeah, and there was another man, what was his name, that writes all about northern Minnesota.
Oh, William Kent Kruger.
Yeah, that's the one. He's
Right.
my favorite author of all.
Wow, wonderful. That's neat. If someone gave you $1 million right now, how would you spend it?
I wouldn't spend it on me. I'm too old to enjoy it. But I would divide it between my children and grandchildren and have each of them get a share and let them enjoy their life with that money and stay good people and stay close to their church, because that's what would be important.
What are some things that are important to you right now?
Let's see. I think keeping all you kids close to God.
Ask her why that is.
Why? Why is that important to you?
Because God is the most important thing in my life. Because I believe in the Lord with all my heart and all my soul and all my mind. And you know, when I have trouble, I think if I pray to the Lord, He's always there. And I don't have to be afraid of anything anymore. Because, you know, the Lord is with us.
Right.
And, you know, I have a book that's, I don't know who gave it to me, but it says, Jesus Calling. I think it's on my walker.
Oh,
If you read it, you can see. I don't know where I got it, because once I hadn't slept for like 80 straight hours, and I just was exhausted, because I think I'm really an insomniac. Maybe at times I just can't sleep, and I was just so desperate to be able to sleep, and I went in the bedroom and picked up that book and started reading, and it made me realize that I finally would go to sleep because the Lord was with me and He was taking care of me and He wouldn't let me die of exhaustion. So He put me to sleep, and from that time on, I came back to my Lord, and I didn't ignore Him anymore like I had. I became a ardent churchgoer, and even now, I go every Sunday if we can with John.
what was your favorite house that you lived in?
I don't know. It's hard. I love the house we had on Clubview.
Clubview Road.
Remember that house?
Yep,
Was that in Winona?
that was in Winona, right?
Well,
In Winona.
in Winona.
So was that the house you lived in before you moved to Florida? did you live in that house before you moved to Florida? I think it was the one that you lived in
Yes, that's right,
before
yeah.
you moved, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Why did you move to Florida?
Because Dad had an offer job, or he saw an ad for somebody to operate a restaurant for 1 year, and he thought that would be good for Johnny, because Johnny was going to South Institute in Menominee.
So John would get some experience.
Johnny thought Johnny would get some experience in a restaurant. And as it worked out, it worked much better for Al.
For Alan. Well, that's how it goes sometimes. Michael and Annie also worked at the restaurant,
They
correct?
did. Michael was the bartender there, and Annie was the waitress,
Right.
and Bobby was older than him. But Bobby would serve coffee to everyone, and that he would kind of get tips that way, and that was great for him.
You also spent time following Bobby's teams, correct?
Yeah, we went every weekend. We'd go over from Naples to Miami, 'cause that's where he played. He played for Nova, and that was in Miami.
Was that fun?
We loved going, and he was on a very good team, and it was fun to watch them all.
Who was your best friend in life?
When I was real young, it was Mary Mauer, and then when I got older, it was Jean Tamioni.
My godmother.
She's your godmother. She was married to Roger Binky for a while, but they got a divorce. And her dad, Ro Tamioni, I think that Ro Tamioni was the one that first introduced him to being a purchasing agent.
Dad.
And so he always credits Ro Tamioni for his career. Well, let's see. Of course, Ellen Kegel for a while until we had a kind of a disagreement about a boy. And so we weren't friends anymore.
How about when you were older?
Well, let's see. I can't remember
Bankers.
very many special friends.
How about the Bankerts and the Chipmans?
Oh, yeah. They were, of course, the one that was probably my best friend then was Margot Bankert. And Margot and I got along so well together. We'd play golf together. And we got along very well. The others, I liked Harriet okay, but she was kind of not as friendly as Margot, or I didn't get along that well with Harriet. We'd have disputes. One time she got mad at me because she thought I was dissing her husband, when all I meant to say was we could tell from a distance that George was ahead of us, because we could tell by the clothes he was wearing. And she thought I was saying something about he didn't wear very nice clothes, and I didn't mean that at all.
what do you like best to do now?
Well, I can't. I like to sit in the. I like to sit in the kitchen at the table and work on crosswords or word search or something like that. Or I like to go sit in the living room and watch the Brewers play baseball. And of course, in season, I'm a big Packer fan.
No! No! No!
But I can't help it. You know, everyone in Wisconsin is a Packer fan. And just like everyone in Minnesota is a Viking fan.
You're also a Badger fan, right?
Oh yeah, I'll never, that's the one team I'll never be disloyal to, because that's where my dad went.
Wisconsin, right?
Wisconsin University.
How do you want to be remembered?
How I want to be remembered. I want to be remembered as a good grandma, because I love all my grandmas, but the only one that was warm and cuddly that I probably could go to with any problem was my grandma Peters. I loved her so much. Of course, I love my Aunt Paula best, because she was the one that took care of me. And I think she really was a mom I didn't have. But after a while, I know she took you girls, because I think you and Lori learned to love Aunt Paula almost as much as I did.
Right.
Because she was such a fine woman, and she was truly a Christian. Because, you know, when our church used to say only Lutherans could go to heaven, and my Aunt Paula thought about it and she said, I don't go with that doctrine. I can't believe that anyone who believes in the Lord and prays to Him won't go to heaven. That's nonsense. And you know, I wish she had taught my dad that lesson.
Right.
Because my dad to his death, I think, didn't like black people.
Yeah. So she was more open to everybody.
Pardon?
Aunt Paula was open to everybody.
Yeah, she was. I don't think it would have mattered to her that Chris married a black man. Of course, I don't think Aunt Paula was alive anymore by then.
No, she was not.
But she wouldn't have objected at all.
Right.
She would have understood.
Yep.
And when we went to Livia's birthday party this year, it was at the trampoline park in Rochester, and there were kids. She brought kids from mostly from her school, were there with her, and when you watch those kids, some of them were black, and some of them, there was even a Japanese boy, and they all were jumping on the trampolines and playing together, and no one paid any attention to what color or anything they were.
Do you think that's how it should be?
But
Do you think that's how
I
it
think
should
that's
be?
the way it should be. I don't believe people should ever be turned away because of their color
Or other things?
or other
religion?
things that don't have to do with religion.
Okay.
But I think people all people should be welcome to churches, because that's what they're there for,
Right.
to take in all people.
Is there any particular thing you want to say?
I want to say I love all my children, and I love them all the same, whether they're doing, but if they're doing wrong, I want them to stop it. But I love them all, and I want them all to know that their mother was very good to all of them. I hope I will, and I hope all my children love me,
I do.
because I love them wholeheartedly.
Thanks, Mom.
And I hope they know that, all of them.